You know what's happening right now that nobody's talking about? While you're standing in line at the grocery store, while you're swiping that EBT card, there are people watching. And I'm not talking about the cashier or the person behind you in line. I'm talking about trained investigators, undercover operatives working for state and federal agencies, and they're documenting everything, every transaction, every item in your cart, every move you make. Here's the reality that's going to shock you. The USDA's Office of Inspector General has deployed over 1,200 investigators across all 50 states in 2025, and their sole mission is to identify SNAP fraud. That's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, what most folks still call food stamps. These aren't amateur hour operations. We're talking about sophisticated surveillance techniques, data analytics that track your purchasing patterns, and yes, real people following recipients to see if they're actually eligible for the benefits they're receiving. Now, if you're playing by the rules, you got nothing to worry about. But if you think the government isn't paying attention, you're living in a fantasy world. They're watching, they're documenting, and the consequences for getting caught are severe. We're talking felony charges, repayment demands, and permanent disqualification. Let me break down exactly what's happening and what you need to know. Look, I need to be straight with you about something that's been bothering me for weeks now. I've been reading reports, talking to people who work in these agencies, and what I'm seeing is a complete transformation in how the government is handling SNAP benefits. This isn't your grandmother's food stamp program anymore. We're living in an era where technology meets old-school detective work. And if you're receiving benefits, you need to understand what's really going on behind the scenes. Let me paint you a picture of what's actually happening in grocery stores across America right now. There are investigators who look just like regular shoppers. They're dressed in jeans and t-shirts, pushing carts, browsing the aisles, and they're watching. They're watching to see if someone uses their EBT card to buy eligible items and then immediately walks outside to sell those items for cash. They're watching to see if someone is driving a brand new luxury vehicle while claiming they can't afford food. They're watching to see if multiple people are using the same card or if benefits are being shared among people who aren't in the same household. These investigators have quotas, they have targets, and they have sophisticated tools that would make your head spin. The technology behind this surveillance is something most people don't understand. Every time you swipe that EBT card, you're creating a digital footprint. The system knows what store you shopped at, what time you were there, how much you spent, and increasingly, what specific items you purchased. They're using artificial intelligence now to detect patterns that might indicate fraud. If you're buying the maximum amount of energy drinks every month and nothing else, that raises a flag. If you're making purchases in 3 different states within the same week, that raises a flag. If your purchasing pattern suddenly changes dramatically, that raises a flag. The computers are running algorithms 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, looking for anomalies. And when they find something suspicious, that's when the human investigators get involved. Now, I want you to understand something really important here. The vast majority of people who receive SNAP benefits are honest, hard-working individuals who fall in on tough times. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you're dealing with a medical situation. Maybe you're a senior citizen on a fixed income, and your Social Security just doesn't stretch far enough to cover everything. There is absolutely no shame in needing help, and these programs exist for a reason. But here's what's happened over the last several years. The fraud rate has gotten so out of control that the government had no choice but to crack down hard. We're talking about billions of dollars in fraudulent claims every single year. When I say billions, I mean with a B. That's your tax dollars, my tax dollars. Money that could be going to people who genuinely need it instead being siphoned off by criminals and scammers. The USDA released data showing that SNAP trafficking, which is when retailers or recipients exchange benefits for cash, has become a multi-billion-dollar underground economy. There are stores, actual brick-and-mortar stores, that exist primarily to facilitate this fraud. They'll give you 50 cents on the dollar for your benefits. You hand them your card, they swipe it for $100 worth of fake purchases, and they give you $50 cash. Then they pocket the difference when they submit the claims to the government. These operations have become so sophisticated that they're using encrypted messaging apps, They're laundering money through multiple accounts, and they're operating across state lines. The federal government has had enough, and they're bringing the hammer down. What really concerns me is that a lot of good people are getting caught up in situations they don't fully understand. Let me give you an example. Say you're receiving SNAP benefits, and your adult daughter moves back home because she lost her job. If she's living in your house and eating food that you're buying with your benefits, technically, she should be included in your household size calculation, which might affect your benefit amount. If you don't report this change, even if you didn't know you were supposed to, that can be considered fraud. Or let's say you get a part-time job and you start making a little extra money, you're required to report income changes within 10 days in most states. If you forget or you don't understand the rule and you keep receiving the same benefit amount, that can be considered an overpayment and you'll have to pay it back. The rules are complicated, they're confusing, and the penalties for mistakes are severe. Here's what the investigators are specifically looking for, and I want you to pay close attention to this because knowledge is power. They're looking for unreported income. If you're claiming you make poverty-level wages, but you're posting pictures on social media of your vacation to Hawaii, they're going to investigate. If you're claiming you can't work due to a disability, but your Facebook page shows you doing construction work on weekends, they're going to investigate. Social media has become one of the biggest tools in their arsenal. These investigators are scrolling through Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of it, looking for evidence that contradicts what you've claimed on your application. I cannot stress this enough. What you post online can and will be used against you if there's an investigation. They're also looking at vehicle registrations and property records. If you're receiving maximum benefits, but you own 3 cars and a boat, that's going to raise questions. If you claim you're homeless, but property records show you own a house, that's fraud. They're cross-referencing data from multiple government databases. Now, your SNAP application gets checked against Social Security records, employment databases, DMV records, tax returns, everything. The level of data integration we're seeing now is unprecedented, and it's only going to get more sophisticated as technology advances. Another major focus area is retailer fraud. The government has identified thousands of stores across the country that have suspicious transaction patterns. Maybe it's a tiny corner store in a neighborhood that suddenly processes millions of dollars in SNAP transactions every month. That doesn't make sense, and it triggers an investigation. They'll send in undercover agents who pose as recipients looking to trade benefits for cash. They'll record the conversations, they'll document the transactions, and then they'll build a case. When they've got enough evidence, they'll raid the store, seize the assets, and prosecute the owners. We've seen cases where store owners have gone to federal prison for 10, 15, 20 years. This is serious business with serious consequences. Now, let me talk about something that really gets under my skin. There are websites and social media groups where people share tips on how to game the system. They'll tell you how to hide income, how to make it look like you qualify when you don't, how to use your benefits to buy restricted items. People treat this like it's some kind of game, like they're beating the system, and they're clever for doing it. Let me tell you something. You're not clever. You're stealing. You're stealing from taxpayers. You're stealing from people who genuinely need help, and you're committing federal crimes that can land you in prison. The government is monitoring these groups. They're taking screenshots. They're documenting everything, and they're using it as evidence in prosecutions. The penalties for SNAP fraud are no joke. If you're convicted of trafficking benefits, that's a federal felony. You can face up to 20 years in prison for large-scale operations. Even for smaller amounts, you're looking at permanent disqualification from the program. You have to repay every penny you received fraudulently, and you'll have a criminal record that follows you for the rest of your life. Good luck getting a job with a fraud conviction on your record. Good luck renting an apartment, getting a loan, or doing anything that requires a background check. You're sabotaging your entire future for short-term gain, and it's one of the dumbest financial decisions you could possibly make. But here's what I really want to focus on because I think this is where the rubber meets the road for most people listening. If you're receiving benefits legitimately, you need to be absolutely meticulous about following the rules. Keep every piece of documentation. Keep copies of your application, your re-certification paperwork, your income verification, everything. If you have any changes in your household composition, your income, your living situation, report it immediately. Don't wait. Don't assume. It doesn't matter. Just report it. If you're not sure whether something needs to be reported, call your caseworker and ask. Get their answer in writing if possible. Protect yourself by being completely transparent and following the rules to the letter. I also want to address the seniors who are watching this because you're particularly vulnerable in this situation. A lot of seniors are on SNAP benefits because Social Security just doesn't cover all their expenses. The cost of living has gone up. Medication costs are through the roof, and food prices are insane right now. If you're a senior receiving benefits, you need to be extra careful because the rules can be confusing and the consequences of mistakes are just as severe for you as they are for anyone else. Make sure you understand all the reporting requirements. Make sure you're re-certifying on time. Make sure if anything changes with your Social Security, your pension, any income source, you report it. And please be very careful about well-meaning family members or friends who might suggest ways to maximize your benefits that could actually be fraud. The other thing that's happening right now is that states are doing mass data matches. They're comparing SNAP recipient lists against other benefit programs, employment records, and financial databases. If you're receiving benefits in multiple states, they're going to catch it. If you're claiming zero income, but your tax return shows you made $50,000 last year, they're going to catch it. The technology has advanced to the point where these kinds of discrepancies are being identified automatically without any human investigator needed until it's time to build the case. The net is getting tighter and tighter, and people who've been getting away with fraud for years are suddenly finding themselves under investigation. Let me tell you what happens when you get that letter in the mail saying you're under investigation. First, panic sets in. Then you start trying to figure out what they know and how they found out. Then you realize you're in serious trouble and you need a lawyer, which is going to cost you thousands of dollars you probably don't have. Then comes the stress of the investigation, the interviews, the document requests, the uncertainty of not knowing what's going to happen. If they determine you committed fraud, you get a bill for repayment, you get disqualified from benefits, and you might face criminal charges. Your life gets turned upside down, and all because you thought you could beat the system or you didn't take the rules seriously enough. It's not worth it. It's never worth it. The bottom line is this. We're in a new era of benefit program enforcement. The government has the technology, the resources, and the political will to crack down on fraud like never before. If you're receiving benefits, make absolutely certain you're doing everything by the book. If you're not sure about something, ask. If you make a mistake, correct it immediately and report it. And if you've been committing fraud, stop right now, consult with a lawyer, and figure out how to make it right before you get caught. Stay safe, stay vigilant. See you in the next video.